She has become an extremely rare Category 5 monster, forecast to come ashore in less than 24 hours. At this point, New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin decides to announce a mandatory evacuation of the city, something that's never been done before. He puts the plan in motion. Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
We'll now go to our parish reports. Orleans.
On a conference call with state and FEMA officials, the New Orleans representative voices one overriding concern.
And we're dealing with our internal transportation plan of how to deal with our large number of people without vehicles to get to a refuge of last resort.
8 a.m. The refuge of last resort, the Superdome, begins taking in evacuees. Behind the scenes, FEMA Director Michael Brown expresses frustration that a mandatory evacuation has not yet been announced. Brown appeals to New Orleans residents.
Voluntary evacuations right now. I'll tell you this personally. If I lived in New Orleans, I'd be getting out of there.
Crawford, Texas, 9:25 a.m. From his ranch, President Bush calls Governor Kathleen Blanco to discuss the New Orleans evacuation plan. At this point, the governor and the mayor have the power and the responsibility for getting people out of harm's way. New Orleans, 9:30 a.m.
President Bush called and told me to share with all of you that he is very concerned about the citizens. He is concerned about the impact that this hurricane would have on our people, and he asked me to please ensure that there would be a mandatory evacuation of New Orleans.
Now there is one. Katrina's landfall is about 20 hours away.
This is going to be an unprecedented event. We want everybody to get out. The city of New Orleans has never seen a hurricane of this strength to hit it almost directly.
Mayor Nagin also imposes a 6 p.m. curfew. 10:11 a.m. The National Weather Service issues an apocalyptic advisory, the kind of warning it would seem positively suicidal to ignore. Devastating damage expected. Most of the area will be uninhabitable for weeks, perhaps longer. At least one half of well-constructed homes will have roof and wall failure. All windows will blow out. Airborne debris will be widespread. Persons, pets, and livestock exposed to the winds will face certain death if struck. By this point on Sunday morning, most people have either fled New Orleans or are in the process of doing so. But tens of thousands of people, many in the lowest lying and poorest parts of the city, are not leaving. They scramble to grab last-minute supplies.
We've got oil, we've got water, we've got food. Pray for us. Pray for all of New Orleans.
They'll tell you, well, I lived here through Betsy or Camille or one of the previous hurricanes. There have been all kinds of hurricanes that have come through. None of them could truly devastate the area.
With a police force of only 1,600, the mayor does not send his officers out to enforce the mandatory evacuation. It's not just a question of manpower. There is also a traditional bias against forcing people out of their own homes. Still, officers do use their powers of persuasion.
I went as far as telling people, I said, well, just do me a favor, make life easy on us. Take a permanent marker, write your social security number along one arm and one leg. So when we find your body, we can check the social security records and find out who you are. That we don't have to try and fingerprint a decomposed body.
Mayor Nagin dispatches regional transit buses to pick up residents at 12 locations around the city and ferry them here to the Superdome.
Come with enough food, perishable items to last for 3 to 5 days. Come with blankets, with pillows, no weapons, no alcohol, no drugs. You know, this is like the governor said, yeah, you're going on a camping trip.
According to Amtrak, the city declines an offer to put hundreds of evacuees on the last passenger train leaving the city. The predictions about Katrina are so ominous that National Hurricane Center Director Max Mayfield not only briefs FEMA Director Michael Brown, and Homeland Security Chief Michael Chertoff, but also President Bush. Louisiana State Representative Arthur Morell and his wife, Cynthia, a New Orleans City Councilwoman, argue about whether to evacuate.
He and my son did not want to leave. They were going to ride out the hurricane. And I said, oh, no.
Jazz trumpeter Kermit Ruffins has already boarded up his house. Now he and his fiancée consider whether to hit the road.
Normally I would stay home, and board up my windows, light a few candles and relax for a day or two. But my fiancée said, Kermit, we better get out of here.
Elsewhere, people stand on street corners, holding a few spare possessions, bags of clothes or pillows. It's 91 degrees and humid as they wait for buses to take them to the Superdome. The process takes hours. When they arrive, they find a shelter with security, medical facilities, food, and water. Between them, FEMA and the Louisiana National Guard have trucked in tens of thousands of liters of water and MREs, or meals ready to eat, the standard military ration. By nightfall, nearly 10,000 people take shelter here.
I think the people in here are pretty happy to be inside.
Indeed, I'm very grateful for this Superdome, because without it, I don't know where we would have went.
By now, FEMA has mapped out 11 storage sites in and around the hurricane zone. They have stockpiled supplies, more than 2.5 million liters of water, more than 1.3 million MREs, and 17 million pounds of ice. 6 p.m., curfew time in New Orleans. The French Quarter is empty. It's warm, quiet, and calm. The news reports tonight all say the same thing. Katrina is barreling across the Gulf of Mexico at Cat 5 strength, the highest ranking. In the world of weather, this is the weapon of mass destruction.
This is pretty much the hurricane that we always talk about.
If it should stay on that current trajectory, just east of downtown New Orleans, that's bad. They avoid the direct hit from the south, but look, on the east side, that's the worst flooding scenario.
Next is FEMA.
9:30 p.m. Louisiana and FEMA officials hold one more conference call before Katrina strikes. The tone of the call is professional, matter of fact. But it seems the state and FEMA are still pinning down some basic details.
FEMA ESS-6 here. We would like to get some additional physical addresses for the general population shelters across Louisiana. I did send an email down to Kitty.
The National Weather Service gives a dire flooding report.
Yeah, you're pretty much going to have storm surge values around 18 to 19 feet outside your levee system. So that's going to cause you overtopping, probably both your federal levees and your parish levees. That's going to be an issue. There'll be major overtopping in your area.